His hand struck my face so hard, I hit the ground like a sack of potatoes. Blood poured from my nose, and my belly ached from the baby kicking inside. I screamed in pain, holding my stomach, begging him to stop. "Please." The baby. "Please, he's moving too much. You're hurting him." I cried out, gasping for breath, hoping my words would melt his stone heart. But my husband Matteo didn't stop. He kicked the stool next to me and grabbed a hot iron rod from the fire pit he used to roast meat outside. My eyes widened. I crawled back on my elbows, screaming, "You think you can talk to me like that in front of my friends?" He barked, eyes blazing with hatred. "You think I'm a joke?" I was 9 months pregnant. The baby could come any day. My mother-in-law, Esperanza, walked in at that moment. She had heard my scream. She froze in the doorway. "Matteo!" she screamed, voice trembling with rage. "Estás matando a tu propio hijo, idiota." But Matteo didn't care. He raised the hot rod, his muscles tight with fury. "Stop it," she screamed again. "Go really deep so she cries, right? Huh? That's what you want, isn't it?" Her words hit me harder than his slap. I looked up, shaking, confused. Why would she say such a thing? Was she mocking me? Or was she reliving something too? And in that moment everything broke. Matteo turned to his mother, his hands still shaking with rage, and she looked at him. Not like a son, but like a monster. Then the baby inside me stopped moving. Dead still. The world around me went silent. Everything turned black. I was just 16 when I met Matteo. He worked at the local farm in our small village, where my uncle used to buy fresh tomatoes and corn. Matteo was handsome, strong, and always had a guitar slung around his back. He'd sit under the mango tree and play songs every evening, and girls would gather around just to hear him sing. I wasn't special, just a girl with long braids and big dreams. I wanted to be a teacher, but life doesn't always let you choose. My father died when I was young, and my mother, Clara, struggled to care for me and my 2 younger brothers. We barely had food. When Matteo first smiled at me, I thought my luck had changed. He started walking me home from the market. He gave me sweet bread, sang to me, and made me feel like a princess. He promised he'd marry me, build me a small house, and give me a better life. "You don't need school," he said once. "I'll protect you. I'll take care of everything." At the time that felt like love. I was just 17 when I moved into his mother's house. Esperanza welcomed me with tight hugs and warm rice pudding. She treated me kindly, at first. But that changed when she realized I wasn't as obedient as she liked. "You need to learn respect," she'd say sharply if I sat before her or didn't bring her water quick enough. Still, Matteo kept me in love. For a few months, everything felt like a dream. Until I got pregnant. That's when the first slap came. It was a small argument. I wanted to go visit my mother. Matteo told me no. I said I'd already promised her. He turned and slapped me across the face without saying a word. I tasted blood. I looked at him, thinking it was a mistake. But it wasn't. "I'm the man here," he said coldly. "You ask me before doing anything." I told his mother. She only sighed. "He's just stressed," she said. "Don't anger him again. You know how men are." That night I couldn't sleep. I held my stomach and whispered to my unborn baby, "I'm sorry. I didn't know it would be like this." Days turned into weeks. The slaps became punches. The punches became kicks. And his mother, she looked away. I tried to leave once. I packed my small bag, walked 2 hours to my mother's house. But Matteo followed me there. He came in the night, dragged me out of my mother's arms, shouting, "She's my wife. You can't keep her." My mother begged. My little brother held onto my dress, crying. But Matteo pulled me by the hair and forced me into his truck. Back to hell. The next morning, Esperanza acted like nothing happened. She placed scrambled eggs in front of me and said, "You should have known better." At 8 months pregnant, I started bleeding. The doctor said I needed bed rest. Matteo said it was nonsense. He still made me cook, fetch water, and do laundry. One night I was too tired. I forgot to cook dinner. He came home drunk. He tore my clothes, pushed me onto the cold kitchen floor. His mother watched. She sat in the living room with her rosary beads, mumbling prayers. And still, she did nothing. Until that final night. The night she screamed, "Go really deep so she cries." And the baby inside me went still. The last thing I remember was the iron rod swinging toward me. The sound of shattering glass. Then nothing. Until I woke up, in the hospital. But the doctor's face was blank. The nurse didn't smile. And I knew. Something terrible had happened. That's when Esperanza entered the room with tears in her eyes. But not for me. Not for the baby. For herself. She said something I'll never forget. Something that changed everything. And just as her lips parted to speak, the door burst open. And in walked someone I hadn't seen in years. Someone who was about to shake my entire world. The door swung open with a loud creak. And standing there was my older sister, Isabella. I hadn't seen her in over 5 years. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock as they scanned the hospital room. For a moment, none of us said a word. The silence stretched long and heavy. Then she ran to me. "Oh my God, Camila. What did he do to you?" she whispered, brushing my matted hair from my forehead. Her hands trembled as she touched the bruises on my face, my arms, my swollen belly. I couldn't speak. My throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton. My lips parted, but the only thing that came out was a sob. "She lost the baby," the nurse said gently from the doorway. The words stabbed deep into my heart. I hadn't even heard them properly before now. I turned my face away from everyone, squeezing my eyes shut, hoping that if I kept them closed long enough, I'd wake up in another world. One where my baby was still moving, where Matteo loved me, where my mother-in-law didn't scream those cursed words. "Where is he?" Isabella asked, standing upright now, voice sharp and dangerous. Esperanza sat in the corner, face still soaked in tears, wringing her hands. He ran. When the police came, he ran. But they're looking for him now. He'll be caught. Isabella snapped her head toward her. "You knew. You watched him do this. You let him." "I didn't know it would go this far," Esperanza began. "You yelled, 'Go really deep so she cries,'" Isabella screamed. "You're as sick as him." Flinched. Those words again. They pierced like a knife. The doctor walked in, his eyes scanning the tension in the room. "She needs rest," he said. "Only one visitor, please." Isabella refused to leave. She sat by my bed all night, holding my hand as I cried softly under the hospital sheets. I told her everything. From the first slap, to the stolen night at my mother's house, to that final terrifying moment in the kitchen. "He was going to kill me," I whispered. She nodded slowly, wiping tears from her cheeks. "But he didn't. You're still here. And now it's time to fight back." I didn't know what she meant then. I was too weak to ask. I just wanted to sleep and forget everything. The next morning I was discharged from the hospital. The baby had been gone for too long before I got there. He hadn't even taken a breath. They wrapped him in a small white cloth and gave him to me to say goodbye. I held him for hours, whispering apologies, rocking him like he was still alive. I named him Angel. Because that's what he was. Isabella helped me pack my things. She refused to let me go back to Matteo's house. Even when Esperanza offered to let me stay there, until things calmed down. "No," Isabella said firmly. "She's coming with me." We went back to her small house in the city. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with her husband Javier, who welcomed me kindly and made up the couch for me to sleep on. For a few weeks everything was quiet. But I wasn't okay. Every time I closed my eyes I saw the fire, the iron rod, his face full of hatred, my baby lifeless. I stopped eating, barely spoke, until one night, Isabella walked in with something that woke me up. "Folder. Legal aid," she said. "We're filing a case against Matteo. And against his mother." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were photos of my bruises, hospital reports, police statements, everything. "We're going to court," she said. "And you're going to tell your story." "But they'll say I'm lying," I whispered. "Esperanza will defend him. They'll say I made it all up. That I lost the baby because I was careless." Isabella took my face in her hands. "You almost died, Camila. He killed your child. If you stay silent, he'll do it again to someone else. Or worse." I looked into her eyes. And for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of strength inside myself. But life had one more blow waiting for me. The next day, while we were returning from the police station, a neighbor ran up to us. "Camila," she said breathlessly, "someone came to your sister's house while you were gone. They left a letter at the door. It's from him." My heart dropped. We rushed home. Isabella picked up the letter with a handkerchief. Had no envelope. Just folded paper with shaky handwriting. I unfolded it slowly, afraid of what I'd find. It read, "You thought you could run. You thought you could hide. But you're mine. You always will be. The next time I find you, I won't miss. I'll go deeper. And this time nobody will scream. Not even my mother." My knees buckled. Javier caught me just in time. Isabella read the letter again, her face growing white with fear and anger. "He's watching you," she whispered. And suddenly, we weren't safe anymore. The next morning, someone threw a brick through Isabella's window. There was a note tied to it. "You're next." We ran to the police. They said they were working on it. But Mateo was still out there, somewhere in the shadows, hunting me like prey. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow, jumping at every sound, looking over my shoulder when I walked to the store, afraid of the dark. Esperanza hadn't been seen since the hospital visit. But deep down I knew. She knew where her son was hiding. And the worst part, I'd have to face her in court soon. Because she wasn't just a witness. She was part of the story. And soon the world would hear everything she did, everything she screamed. But the day before the court hearing, she showed up at Isabella's door, alone. And what she said, what she confessed to, was more shocking than anything I had ever heard in my entire life. The knock at the door was soft, almost too soft to hear over the sound of the television playing in the corner of Isabella's living room. We all froze. Me, Isabella, and Javier. I was holding a bowl of soup, hands trembling so much the spoon kept clinking against the edge. No one moved. The knock came again, this time louder. Javier quietly walked to the door, looked through the peephole and muttered, It's her." "Who?" Isabella asked, her eyes narrowing. "Esperanza." My whole body went cold. I stood up, nearly spilling the soup. Isabella rushed forward. "Don't open it." But Javier hesitated. "She's alone." Isabella pulled me behind her like I was a child. "Then let her stay outside. She's just as guilty as Mateo." But Javier opened the door. Esperanza stood there in a black shawl, her eyes swollen and red like she'd been crying for days. Her lips were cracked, and her hands clutched her rosary beads so tightly the skin on her knuckles had turned white. "Camila," she whispered, her voice broken. "I have to tell you something." Isabella stepped forward. "No, don't. You had your chance. You watched your son almost kill her." "I know," Esperanza said softly, lowering her head. "And I will never forgive myself. But please, 5 minutes. That's all I ask." I looked at her. This was the woman who screamed those words. "Go really deep so she cries." The woman who stood there as her son destroyed me. The woman who fed me eggs the morning after I was dragged home like a dog. I should have spat in her face. But instead I nodded. Because something in her eyes looked different now. Javier let her in, and she sat on the farthest chair, as if afraid to come near. The room was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Esperanza held her rosary tighter, looked at me and said, "Camila, I didn't mean what I said that night." My jaw clenched. She continued, "When I screamed that phrase, I wasn't telling him to hurt you. I was remembering what my husband did to me. Matteo's father. Her voice broke. My husband used to abuse me when Matteo was just a baby. He'd scream that same thing to me. Go really deep so she cries. He'd laugh while doing it. I was 17 when I married him. Just like you. The room was still. She went on. I used to think if I stayed quiet, if I obeyed him, the beatings would stop. But they didn't. And then Matteo started copying him. He would hit stray dogs, scream at his siblings, break toys. I thought I could fix him by loving him harder. Her eyes welled with tears. I was wrong. You let him abuse me, I said quietly. She nodded, ashamed. Yes. I looked away, just like my own mother looked away when it was happening to me. I thought it would pass. But when I walked in that night and saw the iron rod in his hand, something broke inside me. I wasn't talking to you. I was screaming at my past. At myself. I wanted to believe her. But pain doesn't let you forgive so easily. I lost my baby, I whispered. Angel. She looked up at me and sobbed. I know. And it's my fault too. Every time I hear a baby cry, I think of him. I see his face in my dreams. Javier spoke then, his voice cautious. Why are you here, really? Esperanza reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled letter. She handed it to Isabella. I know where Matteo is, she said. And I'm ready to testify. Everyone went silent. Isabella opened the letter slowly, eyes scanning every line. It's his handwriting, she muttered. It says he's in Durango. With your cousin. Esperanza nodded. He called me once. Begged for money. Said he wanted to cross the border. I told him no. I told him I would report him if he ever contacted me again. But I didn't. I stepped forward. Why now? She looked at me and whispered. Because I saw the devil in my son's eyes. And I realized I created him. For the first time I saw her as something other than a monster. I saw her as a broken woman. A mother who had been abused. A mother who became blind to her own son's evil. Isabella didn't trust her. Not fully. But the letter was evidence. Location. Lead. We gave it to the police. Days passed. Then a week. Then two. Until one morning we got the call. Matteo had been arrested. He tried to flee a police checkpoint in Durango. He crashed his truck into a ditch and broke his arm. They found him with a fake ID and a stash of money. He was coming back in handcuffs. The day of the court hearing arrived. I wore a simple white dress and braided my hair the way I used to before the pain. My hands were shaking, my knees weak, but I walked into that courtroom with Isabella beside me, head held high. Matteo sat across the room, his arm in a sling, his face cold. He didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. Esperanza sat behind me. Her eyes never left the floor. The judge asked me to speak. I stood up slowly. And I told my story. Everything. The beatings. The blood. The night he used the iron rod. The moment the baby stopped moving. I didn't leave anything out. Cried. The courtroom cried. Even the judge had to pause. Then Esperanza spoke. She confessed to watching the abuse. To letting it happen. To saying those words. And when she did, she broke down so hard they had to stop the trial for 15 minutes. Matteo's lawyer tried to claim mental illness. But it didn't matter. The court sentenced him to 25 years in prison. When the gavel slammed, I felt like I could breathe again. After the trial, Esperanza came to me one last time. She handed me a necklace. It was small, silver, with a charm shaped like an angel. For Angel, she said. I didn't say anything. Just nodded and took it. She left after that. I never saw her again. But that night, when I lay in Isabella's guest room, staring at the ceiling, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. But peace doesn't last forever. The next morning I got a call from a blocked number. Answered. And a deep voice whispered, "You think this is over?" I dropped the phone. And that's when I realized. Someone else was still out there. Someone who wanted revenge. And they were coming for me next. I stared at the phone on the floor as if it might explode. My hands were frozen, my heart beat loud in my ears. The voice still echoed in my mind. You think this is over? I picked up the phone and tried to call Isabella, but my fingers couldn't stop shaking. I dropped it again. That voice wasn't Matteo. I knew his voice better than my own heartbeat, and this wasn't it. This voice was deeper, older, slower, someone else. But who? I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm myself down. Maybe it was just a prank. Maybe someone from Matteo's gang of friends. He always hung around men who laughed at pain, who joked about hurting women. The same ones who clapped when he slapped me at the bar once. I had forgotten all about them. Until now. I rushed to Isabella's room and knocked loudly. She opened, startled, her eyes still full of sleep. "What's wrong?" she asked, stepping aside so I could enter. I told her everything, the voice, the words, the fear. She closed the door quickly and locked it. "You need to report that call," she said. "Now." We went to the police the next morning. They checked the number. Untraceable. Whoever called me had used a burner phone. The officer scratched his head. "Probably one of Matteo's old friends. We'll keep an eye on it. But if anything else happens, come straight to us." I nodded, but inside I felt helpless again. My son was dead. Matteo was in prison. But somehow I was still being hunted. We changed my phone number. Moved me to a friend of Isabella's, a woman named Sophia who lived in a small town outside the city. I stayed with her for a few weeks. She was kind, always smiling, always praying. Her children called me Tia Camila, even though we weren't related. I started to feel safe again. I even joined a support group at a nearby church, women who had survived violence. I told my story. They listened. Some cried with me. Some hugged me after. One of them was named Lourdes. She had 3 kids and a scar running across her cheekbone. She said her husband cut her with a broken mirror. We became close, like sisters. We'd take walks together in the evening, talk about our dreams, our fears, the nightmares we both still had. Then one night, as we walked back from the group meeting, we saw something strange. A dark car parked just outside Sophia's house. Engine running. Windows tinted black. Lourdes grabbed my hand. "Let's wait." We stood behind a tree watching. The car didn't move. After 10 minutes, Lourdes whispered, "Come. We'll take the back road." We circled the block and entered the house through the back gate. Sophia was home cooking rice. We told her about the car. She peeked outside but saw nothing. Still that night I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., a small stone hit the window. I jumped up, heart pounding. Another stone. Then another. I crawled to the window, barely peeking through the curtain. The dark car was back, and someone was standing outside it, wearing a hoodie, staring straight at the house. I called Isabella, whispering so low I could barely hear myself. She said she'd call the police right away. I watched as the figure got back in the car and slowly drove away. When the police came, they found nothing. Again, I was tired of being scared, tired of hiding, tired of feeling like prey. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. I was going to find out who was behind it. And I had one idea where to start. I asked Sophia for an old photograph album. Matteo had told me once, years ago, that he had a half-brother from his father's side, a man named Ramon, someone Esperanza never talked about. He had been in prison too, for armed robbery. Matteo used to say, "Ramon is my idol. He always took what he wanted." I never met him, but I remembered the way Matteo's eyes lit up when he spoke of him. I showed the photo to Lourdes. He gasped, "I know this man. He lives 2 towns from here. He runs a scrapyard. People say he's dangerous." I asked her to take me there. She refused at first. "It's too dangerous," she said. "What if it's him?" "I need to know," I said. "Because if it's not him, I'll still be hunted. But if it is, maybe I can stop it." She agreed. We left early the next morning, disguising ourselves with scarves and sunglasses. The scrapyard was huge. Rusty car parts, broken metal and giant machines. A dog barked wildly as we entered the gate. A man stepped out of a shed, wiping grease off his hands. He looked exactly like Matteo, but older, heavier, with a long beard. "Can I help you?" he asked, squinting at us. I stepped forward. "Are you Ramon?" He nodded slowly. "Who's asking?" I pulled down my scarf. "I'm Camila, Matteo's wife." His expression didn't change. He just stared at me. "I need to know if it's you," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Are you the one threatening me?" Still no change. No guilt. No shock. "I heard what happened," he said finally. "Matteo told me everything. From prison." "So it was you," I whispered. He looked at me long and hard. And then, he smiled. Cold, cruel smile. "I'm just reminding you who you belong to," he said. I stepped back. Lourdes pulled out her phone and started recording. "I don't belong to anyone," I said. He chuckled. "You belong to my brother. That means you're part of us now. You tried to destroy him. That makes you our enemy." I clenched my fists. "Your brother destroyed my child." He shrugged. "That's between you and God." We ran. Straight to the police. We showed them the video. Filed a restraining order. They arrested Ramon for harassment and intimidation. But he got out in 2 days. There wasn't enough evidence to keep him in. I was back at square one. Scared. Hunted. Broken. But I wasn't alone. Lourdes stayed by my side. Isabella came every weekend. Sophia prayed with me every night. We were building a circle of strength. Until one day, that circle broke. Lourdes didn't show up for our morning walk. Called her phone. No answer. I went to her house. Her front door was open. Her baby crying inside. She was gone. The police searched. Her name was reported. But she had vanished. And inside her house I found something chilling. On the kitchen table, a folded piece of paper. It read, "One by one they'll all pay. Until you do." My knees buckled. I grabbed the baby, called the police, and waited on the porch shaking. And I knew now. This wasn't just about Matteo. It wasn't just Ramon either. There was someone else. Someone watching everything. And they weren't going to stop until I gave them what they wanted. But I didn't know what that was. Not yet. The police searched for Lourdes for 3 days. They found nothing. No phone, no clothes, no signs of struggle. Just her baby crying in that empty house and the cold note that chilled my spine each time I reread it. One by one they'll all pay. Until you do. I hadn't slept. My body was tired, but my mind was on fire. Who was this they? What did they want from me? What did I have to give? Isabella came to the house and took the baby home with her temporarily, just until the investigation stabilized. Sophia held me in her arms the night the police officially classified Lourdes as missing under suspicious circumstances. That phrase rang in my head like a threat wrapped in a mystery. The next morning I received a package. No return address. No name. Just my first name scribbled in red ink. Inside was a single item. Lourdes' scarf, soaked in dried blood. It collapsed to the ground. Sophia screamed and called the police. The scarf was bagged for evidence. I knew then. This was personal. They weren't after money. They weren't after silence. They were after me. And they were willing to destroy anyone around me. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the wall, clutching Angel's little angel necklace in my fist until it left marks in my palm. I had to do something. Anything. So I started digging. I went back through everything Matteo ever told me. His stories, his jokes, his whispers in the dark when he thought I wasn't really listening. He used to say, "My blood is cursed, Camila. My father was evil. His brother worse. And now I got it too. Can't run from your roots." I thought it was nonsense back then. But now, I looked deeper. I went through court documents, police records, everything I could find about Matteo's family history. And that's when I found it. Matteo's father had a brother. Not Ramon. A younger brother. Name. Cristobal Vargas. Convicted in 1988 for child trafficking and ritual abuse. Sentenced to 30 years. Released after 25 for good behavior. He disappeared right after release. No phone. No address. No job. No trace. But one of the victims, who had written a testimony back in the late 80s, mentioned something disturbing. She said Cristobal used to tell his victims, "You scream and I'll go deeper. Cry and I'll take your soul." It was almost the exact line Esperanza had screamed that night. My blood ran cold. I printed out Cristobal's mugshot and took it to Esperanza. She was living in a small town now, volunteering at a women's shelter. She had started a new life, trying to atone, I guessed. When she saw the photo, her face drained of color. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "He's Mateo's uncle," I said. She nodded slowly. "Cristobal. We never spoke of him. He was banned from the family. The things he did. Is he capable of this?" "Yes. Of hurting women, children, sending threats." Esperanza closed her eyes and said nothing. That silence was my answer. So I tracked down the last known lawyer who had worked on Cristobal's release. A man named Luis Herrera. He had retired, but I found him living in a modest home outside Guadalajara. I went to see him. He didn't want to talk at first. Said it was confidential. Said Cristobal had served his time. Until I told him what was happening. The missing friend. The threats. The bloody scarf. He grew quiet. He grew quiet. Then he leaned forward and whispered. He told me he had something planned when he got out. He said, "I'll rebuild the house of Vargas with the broken bones of the women who forgot their place." Froze. This wasn't about me. This was about control, punishment, power, and revenge. Luis said Cristobal had gone to a rural village called San Tierra Blanca, deep in the hills. Said he wanted to live simply. That didn't sound like a man looking for peace. Sounded like a man building something dark. I left the very next morning, taking a bus through winding roads and broken hills. Took 8 hours to reach the village. When I arrived, I asked for Cristobal. The villagers looked at me strangely. Some spat on the ground. One old woman said, "El Diablo." He lived in a wooden house on the edge of the forest. The house was oddly quiet. No animals. No smoke. No life. I approached cautiously. Knock once. No answer. Knocked again. The door creaked open by itself. Inside, the air was heavy. There were symbols painted on the walls. Symbols I didn't understand. Bones hung from strings. A baby doll was nailed to the window. I stepped back, heart hammering. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the room. Lourd's scarf. The same one from the package. But now clean. Next to it, her necklace. I was shaking. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy. Low. Deliberate. I turned. Cristobal stood in the doorway. Old. Wrinkled. But his eyes, dark and empty, looked like death itself. He smiled. "Camila," he said, like he'd known me forever. "The wife of the broken one. Come to finish the curse." "I came to end it," I said, voice trembling. He stepped forward. "Do you know why Mateo hurt you?" "Because he's evil," I spat. He chuckled. "No, my dear. 'Cause I taught him. I raised him when his father went to prison. I showed him what love really is. Power. Control. You destroyed him," I whispered. "And now," he said, reaching for something behind his back, "I'll destroy you too." He pulled out a machete. Ran. I flew out the door, into the forest, branches cutting my arms, lungs burning. I heard him behind me laughing. But I didn't stop. Not until I reached the village again. The townspeople saw me, bleeding and crying. They surrounded me. Asked what happened. When I told them, they nodded. "We've waited long enough," the old woman said. And just like that, a crowd formed. They marched toward Cristobal's house. With torches, machetes, fire in their eyes. I stayed behind, shaking, tears falling down my face. 20 minutes later, smoke rose into the sky. The house burned. Cristobal was never seen again. They said he ran. Some say he burned inside. The authorities came, found some of lured items but no body. They believed he had abducted her, but there was still no trace. I returned to Sophia's house. I was broken, tired, but I had survived. And then, 2 weeks later, got a letter. No name, no blood, just one sentence. You think he was the last one? My scream shattered the silence. Let her go, screamed my mother-in-law Carmen, her hands trembling as she pushed through the door and found my husband pinning me to the wall with one hand and holding a belt in the other. I was sobbing, clutching my belly where the bruise from the previous night's beating still throbbed. Enrique froze, as if he hadn't expected anyone to actually intervene. Carmen rushed toward me and grabbed my arm, dragging me gently away from him. I told you I won't watch you kill this girl, she cried out, her voice cracking with both anger and pain. But Enrique wasn't done. You don't know what she did, he barked. She disrespected me, again. Carmen turned to him with eyes like fire. And you think hitting her solves it? What kind of son did I raise? That sentence echoed in the room. Carmen had always been quiet, often acting as if the abuse wasn't her business. But that day something in her snapped too. She turned to me. You're leaving with me. For a brief second I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that I could just walk out that door with Carmen and be free. But Enrique stepped forward and grabbed Carmen's arm. You're not taking my wife anywhere. Carmen looked up at him, not flinching, and whispered with so much bitterness. You're just like your father. And with that, Enrique slowly released her. The silence in the room was filled with years of hidden truths. Carmen wrapped a shawl around me and helped me walk outside. But freedom wasn't as easy as stepping out the door. I stayed with Carmen for a few days. She had a small guest room with faded curtains and a warm mattress. It was the first time I'd slept in peace in years. I even smiled one morning when I saw her making hot chocolate for me in the kitchen. It felt like a mother's love, something I had never truly known, not even from my own mother. You deserve kindness, Maria, she told me as she handed me the cup. I should have spoken earlier, but I was scared of losing my son. Now I see I've already lost him. We sat in silence. I didn't know how to respond. But the silence was soon broken. A loud bang at the front door shook the small house. Carmen stood, her eyes darting to the door. My heart dropped. It was Enrique. He kicked the door twice more before yelling. You think you can hide her here, Mom? You think I won't find her? Carmen grabbed my hand and motioned for me to run to the back door, but it was too late. Enrique forced the door open and stomped into the room. What are you doing here? Carmen asked, stepping between us. I came to take back what's mine, he said, glaring at me. She's my wife. No, Carmen said firmly. She's a human being, not an object. Enrique shoved her aside, just enough to pass, and reached for me. I backed away, but I knew if he caught me, I wouldn't leave his house alive next time. That's when Carmen did something I will never forget. She grabbed a heavy ceramic vase from the table and smashed it against Enrique's shoulder. He yelped in pain and turned to her in shock. Get out! Carmen screamed. Or I swear I'll call the police. Enrique held his arm and cursed but didn't strike back. Instead he looked between us, his own mother and his battered wife, and without a word he stormed out. That night, Carmen locked all the doors and sat by the window with a kitchen knife in her lap. She didn't sleep. Neither did I. But the war was far from over. The next morning, as I went to get my things from the room, Carmen called out from the living room. Maria, she said slowly, I think there's someone outside the house. I walked to the window carefully. Sure enough, Enrique's car was parked across the street. He was just sitting there watching the house. For 3 days he parked there from morning till night. Sometimes he stepped out, paced around the car, lit a cigarette. He didn't knock. He didn't scream. He just watched. It was terrifying. And then on the 4th day he was gone. I thought that maybe he had given up. that maybe Carmen's bravery had scared him off. I allowed myself to smile for a moment. Maybe I could breathe again. But that evening I received a letter. It was slipped under the door. Carmen picked it up and handed it to me with shaking hands. Opened it. Inside was a single note in Enrique's handwriting. "If I can't have you, nobody will." Froze. My fingers were trembling. My chest tightened. "What does it say?" Carmen asked, seeing my reaction. I couldn't speak. I just handed her the note. She read it and sat down slowly. "We need to go to the police," she whispered. But when we did, the police shrugged. "Unless he physically threatens or harms you again, there's nothing we can do," one officer said. "A note isn't enough." We walked out of the station, defeated. Carmen looked at me, her eyes full of guilt. "I should have stopped this earlier. I should have taken you away from him years ago." I tried to hold her hand, but mine were still shaking. That night, Carmen called a friend of hers in another city, a retired lawyer named Rosario. She said I could come and stay with her for a while. The next morning we packed a small bag and Carmen said goodbye at the bus station. "Don't call him. Don't answer his messages," she said. "And when you're ready, we'll start the process of getting you divorced." I cried in her arms. She was the mother I never had. The bus pulled away, and for the first time in a long time I felt like maybe, just maybe, my life was beginning again. But just when I thought I was safe. Halfway through the journey, the bus was stopped at a checkpoint. A police officer entered and asked for everyone's ID. I handed him mine. He looked at it, then looked at me. "Please step off the bus," he said. "Why?" I asked, confused. "Just follow me." I stepped off, my heart pounding. And there he was, Enrique, standing by a police vehicle, holding a document in his hand. "I reported her missing," he told the officer. "She's my wife. She's not mentally stable." I turned to the officer. "He's lying. He's abusing me. I'm running away." The officer looked between us, unsure. "She's my wife," Enrique repeated. "I have proof." Then he showed the officer the fake medical paper, stating I had mental issues and needed care. I screamed. "That's not true. He forged that paper." But the officer shook his head. "We need to confirm this at the station." "No," I screamed. "Please. Don't let him take me back." I tried to run, but Enrique grabbed my wrist so tight I cried out. And just like that, everything started to spiral again. Everything changed after that scream. It echoed through the house, and even though the neighbors pretended not to hear, I knew they did. My mother-in-law had shouted, "Go really deep so she cries," like she was cheering on a bull in a ring. But I was the one tied down. I was the bull. And I was already bleeding inside. After that day, something in me broke, but I kept quiet. I still cleaned. I still cooked. I still served him his food while my hands trembled. I still washed the sheets even though they were often stained with things I didn't want to speak of. But my silence didn't protect me. It only made me invisible. My daughter, Isabella, stopped speaking. She had once been a bubbly little girl, always giggling and following me around, asking to help me stir the pot or sweep the floor. But now she just stared at walls, flinched when doors slammed, and clung tightly to her brother Mateo, who tried to be brave even though he was just 10. I tried to hide the bruises from them, covered my arms. I wore long dresses, even in the heat. I told them I had fallen or bumped into something. But children know. They always know. One evening, after cleaning up a broken plate my husband had thrown at me for putting too much salt in his soup, I sat by the bedroom window and just stared at the moon. I whispered, "God, are you watching? Am I still your daughter?" That night he came home drunk again. He didn't even speak. He just grabbed me by the hair and dragged me into the room. My knees scraped against the floor. I bit my tongue so hard it bled, just to stop myself from screaming. When he was done, I lay there like a body without breath. My mother-in-law opened the door and looked at me. "Don't be dramatic," she said coldly. "All women go through this. At least he comes home to you. My son is a man and men have needs. You're lucky he still touches you." Her words burned more than any slap ever could. I wanted to yell. I wanted to tell her she raised a monster. I wanted to ask her what kind of mother could look at this and say it was okay. But I just lay there. Days passed. I started hiding small coins around the house. In the hem of my dress. Beneath the flour sack. Inside the children's stuffed bear. I didn't know what I was planning. I didn't have a friend to run to. But I knew I had to save something. Even if it was just a few coins. Then something unexpected happened. My husband lost his job. He came home angry, shouting at the top of his voice. He kicked over a chair, slammed the door, and blamed me for everything. He said it was my bad luck. That ever since he married me, things had gone wrong. He screamed that I was a curse. That night, he didn't just hit me. He locked me in the small storage room behind the house. It was dark. It smelled like rat droppings and old kerosene. I sat on the cold floor with only a torn bag for cover. My back hurt. My arms ached. I cried, not loudly, but in soft hiccups that even I could barely hear. The next morning, he didn't let me out. He threw bread through the door like I was an animal. I tore off a piece and saved the rest for my children, knowing that sooner or later I'd be let out. 2 days passed. When he finally opened the door, my legs were so weak, I fell forward. Isabella ran to me, crying. She kissed my cheeks over and over and whispered, "Mama, don't die." That night, I held her and Matteo close. I told them stories about clouds and dreams. I didn't know if I believed in either anymore, but I needed them to hear something that wasn't pain. A week later, my mother-in-law came home from the market limping. She had slipped and fallen, and now she needed help with everything. I was the one helping her dress. I was the one feeding her, cleaning her room, rubbing balm into her swollen leg. "You're still here," she said one day. "I thought you'd have left by now." "Where would I go?" I replied, my voice steady. She looked at me, then really looked. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't cold. That night, as I washed her dishes, she called me into the living room. My husband was snoring on the couch, reeking of alcohol. She said, "You're stronger than I was." My husband beat me too. I stayed for 40 years. I didn't say anything. She looked at me. "Don't stay if you don't want to. Just promise me, if you go, don't come back." The next morning, something happened that I will never forget. Matteo ran into the kitchen screaming, "Papa is hitting Bella." My blood froze. I dropped the kettle and ran into the living room. And there he was, holding Isabella by the neck, screaming at her because she spilled his drink. She was gasping. Her feet were barely touching the ground. I lost control. I grabbed the metal tray from the table and slammed it across his back. He let her go. She fell to the ground coughing, holding her neck. He turned to me with fire in his eyes. "You hit me," he growled. I stood between him and Isabella, my hands shaking, but I didn't move. "If you touch her again, I'll kill you," I whispered, more to myself than to him. He raised his hand, but this time someone else screamed. My mother-in-law. From behind us. Her voice rang loud, piercing the air. "If you touch her again, I'll bury you myself." We all froze. Even my husband. She limped toward him, eyes red with fury, holding her walking stick like a weapon. "You don't touch my granddaughter. Not today. Not ever again." And just like that, the monster backed away. But I knew it wasn't over. That night, I stayed awake with a knife hidden under my pillow. Because something was going to happen. And I had to be ready. I woke up in a hospital bed, with bandages wrapped tightly around my arms and a sharp pain across my ribs. The nurse looked at me with pity in her eyes as she adjusted the 4 in my hand. Could barely speak. My lips were cracked. My eyes were swollen. "You're lucky you're alive," she whispered. "If that neighbor hadn't called the police, I don't know what would have happened." My heart broke again. I remembered the beating. Chair. The glass. Choking. I remembered how he left me unconscious, my own blood soaking into the floor. And now I was lying in a hospital bed, barely breathing, and no one from my family had come. No one except Suddenly the door creaked open. My eyes widened. It was her. My mother-in-law. She stepped into the room slowly, her lips trembling. She looked different. Her hair was messy, her clothes unkempt, like she hadn't slept all night. She stood by my bed, eyes glued to my face. "I came," she said softly. I didn't respond. She reached for my hand. Flinched. Tears filled her eyes. "I saw it with my own eyes," she whispered. "What he did to you. My son. My son is a monster." Silence filled the room like smoke. Then she dropped to her knees beside my bed and cried like a child. I screamed at him. I screamed and screamed until the neighbors came. I told him to go deeper and deeper. "Because I thought you were faking it. I told him to make you cry. But when I saw your face, when I saw your blood on the wall, I knew I had gone too far." I stared at her, stunned. For the first time I saw regret in her eyes. Guilt. Real guilt. But it was too late. "You encouraged him," I whispered with the little breath I had. "You pushed him to destroy me." She sobbed harder. "I didn't know. Swear. I thought you were being lazy, disrespectful. Like all the stories he told me. I didn't know he locked you in the house. I didn't know he kept your phone. I didn't know he stopped you from seeing anyone." I turned my head away. A deep ache sat in my chest. She wiped her tears and said, "They arrested him. After the neighbors called. He's in custody." I didn't know what to feel. Relief. Fear. Anger. All I felt was empty. Few days passed. My wounds slowly healed. The doctor said I would need therapy, both physical and emotional. One morning I was sitting up trying to sip tea, when the nurse returned with an envelope. "It's from him," she said hesitantly. Froze. I opened it slowly. Inside was a short letter written in his usual handwriting. "I didn't mean to go that far. I was just angry. I wanted to teach you respect. You made me lose control. Tell them to let me out. We can fix this." Fix what? My soul. My dignity. The bruises on my body. I tore the letter into pieces. But the problem was not just the man. It was the society around me. Because after I returned home from the hospital, another shock awaited me. His relatives had gathered in front of our small house. A group of women sat with bowls of food, some of them even dancing, laughing like it was a wedding. I thought I was dreaming. Then one of his aunts approached me and said coldly, "We heard you want to send our son to prison. You better watch yourself. No woman destroys her husband's name and goes free." I couldn't believe it. I was the victim. And now I was the enemy. But I stood tall. "I'll go to court," I said clearly. "He will face justice." They laughed in my face. "Which court? Do you think the judge will believe you? Do you have money for a lawyer? He's already saying it was self-defense. That you attacked him with a knife." Froze. He was flipping the story. Trying to make me look like the attacker. My hands trembled. That evening I sat alone in the room, wondering what to do next. The pain was too much. The shame. The fear. I remembered how my parents were dead. I had no siblings. I had no one to run to. I had only one person left who had shown a little guilt. His mother. And so I took a bold step. I walked to her house and knocked on her door. She opened it, shocked to see me. I looked her in the eye and said, "If you really regret what happened, then help me. Speak the truth. Come to court with me." She hesitated. Then she stepped back and let me in. Inside her small kitchen, she sighed. "They will come after me too." He nodded. "But it's the right thing to do." She sat in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll testify." I burst into tears. The next few weeks were a battle. Every day someone came to threaten me. They spat at my gate. They shouted insults on the road. I couldn't go to the market without hearing, "Homebreaker," or "wicked wife." But I didn't stop. I went to a local legal aid center and found a kind woman named Elena who helped me prepare for court. She said, "You are not alone. We've helped many women like you. But you must be strong. Your story will change lives. And I believed her. The day of the court finally came. I sat in the witness box, heart pounding. Then he walked in. My husband. He wore a clean shirt and acted like a saint. He bowed to the judge and smiled like nothing had ever happened. Then he lied. One by one, he twisted the truth, saying I was violent, ungrateful, mad. I clenched my fists. Then it was my mother-in-law's turn. She stepped up slowly. Everyone expected her to defend her son. Instead, she shocked the courtroom. I was there, she said. I told him to hit her. Thought she deserved it. But when I saw the damage, I knew we were all wrong. My son almost killed her. And I helped him. Gasps filled the court. My husband's face turned pale. That was the moment I knew. Something had shifted. But the drama wasn't over yet. As we walked out of the courtroom, heading to the car, a man jumped from behind the building, holding a bottle filled with liquid. He screamed, "You'll regret this." He threw it straight at me. The bottle flew through the air with a loud scream behind it. Closed my eyes. I thought it was acid. I thought that would be the end of my life, right there outside the courthouse. But at the last second, someone jumped in front of me. It was my mother-in-law. The bottle hit her shoulder and crashed to the ground. It wasn't acid. It was just muddy water. But the threat was clear. That man, one of my husband's cousins, pointed his finger at us and shouted, "Next time it won't be water. We'll burn you alive for disgracing this family." The police quickly caught him. People around screamed. Some took videos. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my mother-in-law's arm. She was hurt but not badly. Still she was trembling. "I told you they'd come for me," she whispered as I held her. "I won't let them touch you," I said. But my voice cracked. Deep down I was terrified. We got into Elena's car and drove away from the courthouse fast. I sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window, my thoughts running wild. The trial wasn't over. But now the fight wasn't just in court. It was in the streets, in the whispers, in the threats from strangers who thought I had done something wrong by speaking out. That night we couldn't go home. Elena took us to a safe shelter for abused women. It was quiet and hidden. There were many women there. Some with broken arms, some with swollen eyes, and some with babies. We were all running from the same thing. Violence. My mother-in-law sat on a mattress in the corner of the room. Her arms wrapped around herself like a child. She hadn't eaten since morning. "I don't know how to face anyone anymore," she said. "They're calling me a traitor. My sisters say I destroyed our bloodline." I looked at her and said softly, "No, you saved me. And maybe you saved yourself too." She stared at me, her eyes filled with tears. The next morning we woke up to shocking news. My husband had been granted bail. Despite the injuries, despite my testimony, despite the attack outside court, he was released. I fell to the ground when I heard. "He's coming back," I said, gasping. "He's going to finish what he started." The counselor at the shelter told me, "We'll protect you. We'll report every threat. Stay calm." But I couldn't stay calm. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. The way he smiled when he hit me. The way he laughed when I cried. The way his mother once clapped while I was begging for help. Now she was by my side. But I still had nightmares. 2 days later, I received a message on my new phone. It was from an unknown number. "Come home, wife. Miss you. Let's talk like adults. I forgive you. Forgive me." For what? For not dying. I blocked the number. But the messages kept coming. From new lines, new accounts, even fake ones pretending to be my old friends. "Why are you destroying your home? You're a disgrace. You should be thankful you even had a husband." And then one day I received a photo. It was a picture of my old house. The door wide open, my clothes scattered on the floor. My books burned in a pile. The caption said, "This is what happens when you forget your place." I screamed so loudly the whole shelter came running. They had burned my things. They had broken into my home and destroyed everything I owned. I wept like a child. I fell to the floor, clutching my stomach. I have nothing left, cried. But the shelter women helped me. They hugged me. They gave me food and clothes. And they reminded me, you still have yourself. That night, my mother-in-law knelt beside me and placed her hand on my shoulder. You are the strongest girl I've ever met, she said. You're even stronger than me. Help destroy you. But now I want to help you rise. We held each other in silence. But peace didn't last long. Because 3 days later, a woman from my husband's family found the shelter. She stormed in, screaming like a mad woman. Where is that witch? Where's that demon pretending to be a victim? The shelter guard stopped her, but she spat on the floor and said, if the law won't stop her, we will. That night, the director of the shelter moved us again, this time to a government-protected facility. We've seen this kind of rage before, she said. But don't worry. You are now under state protection. I looked at my mother-in-law. She was pale, weak, but still with me. That night we both couldn't sleep. I had a dream, she said. In the dream, my son was burning in fire. I was screaming, but no one heard me. I stared at her. Then I told her mine. I dreamt I was on a tall cliff. Below me was water. Behind me was fire. I had to choose, jump and drown or stay and burn. She whispered, what did you do? I replied, I jumped. Silence. But I didn't drown. She nodded slowly. We're not drowning either, she said. We'll rise. Even if the fire keeps burning. The next morning we received an alert. The court date for final judgment had been fixed. The judge would rule in 2 days. It would decide whether my husband would go to prison or walk free. I felt my stomach tighten. Would they believe me? Would they punish him? Or would they say I was overreacting? I spent the next 2 days writing down every memory, every bruise, every word he ever said. I practiced my words with Elena. Prayed. Cried. Then the day came. I stood in front of the mirror, wearing a long dress someone at the shelter had donated to me. My hair was tied back. My eyes swollen but open. I am not going there as a victim, I told myself. I am going as a fighter. We entered the court. The room was full. Some people whispered as I walked in. Some pointed. My husband sat calmly with his lawyer. When he saw me, he smirked. I ignored him. Then the judge walked in. We all stood. My hands were cold. The judge spoke. Then he asked my mother-in-law to come forward. She stood. She looked at her son. I am not proud, she said. But I will not lie anymore. Then she told the court everything. Every scream. Every slap. Every word she had once cheered. She cried in front of everyone. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness box and told my story. My voice was shaking, but I didn't stop. I told the court about the abuse, the threats, the bruises, the broken plates, the shattered bones, the nights I slept on the floor, and the days I wanted to die. The room was silent when I finished. Then the judge stood up. He opened his file. And just as he was about to deliver the judgment, someone rushed into the courtroom, holding a folder, screaming, "Stop! Stop! I have something to show." The courtroom fell silent. Light from the high windows glinted across the room. I stood in the witness box, chest tight. My mother-in-law sat behind me, her hands clasped tight. The judge paused, looking at a man who had just rushed in, holding a thick folder, panting, eyes wide. He was a journalist, someone I had never seen before. He held out the folder and said, "Your Honor, this information is new. It contradicts everything his defense has claimed." My heart pounded. Would this help me? Would it break the silence that had protected my husband for so long? The judge frowned. "Let me see that," he said. The courtroom watched with bated breath. The journalist approached the bench and handed over the folder. He said, "I have proof that my client was part of the harassment ring. These photos, videos, messages, all trace back to him." He looked directly at my husband. Each message, each threat, all angels of the same family. My husband's face tightened. His lawyer leaned forward, whispering fiercely. The judge flipped through the pages. Then he raised his head. "This is significant," he said. My knees shook. But I held my breath. The journalist continued. "I received these messages by accident, copied from a shared group. The same group that circulated threats to the victim. To you, to her friends, her lawyer, and witnesses." He looked at me. "Because you spoke. Because this woman told the truth." Tears sprang in my eyes. My husband's lawyer stood up to object. "Objection. These are hearsay. No chain of custody." The judge held up a hand. "Quiet. Let me review this before you argue." For the next few minutes, everyone watched as he examined each message printed on paper. Screenshots of threats like, "If I can't have you, nobody will, and one by one they'll all pay." Some lines were in handwriting matching that from the letter found in Lured House. Some photos showed that same burned pile of clothes. Some videos captured men laughing when they burned them. My stomach swirled with hope. At last, the judge looked up. "It appears the defendant's family was involved in a coordinated campaign of harassment and violence. This new evidence is credible." My mother-in-law exhaled softly beside me. I didn't dare move. Then the judge turned to my husband. "You have committed a pattern of abuse. You have used your family to threaten, to scare, and to destroy. The court finds you guilty of domestic violence, harassment, false letters, and instigating attacks." A gasp swept through the courtroom. Exhaled. Tears streamed down my face. The judge continued. "The combined sentence for your actions is 30 years in prison, without possibility of early release. Furthermore, residency restrictions and no-contact orders will remain in place for at least 50 years. My husband's face went white. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. The judge then addressed the entire court. "I hope this ruling sends a message. No one is above the law, even if they come from powerful families. And that women who speak out deserve justice, not shame." I sat down, shaking, free of fear, but feeling the weight of every day I'd lost. That afternoon, when the courtroom emptied, mothers of other abused women approached me. They hugged me tight. Some cried. One said softly, "You changed things today." Outside the courthouse, under the late sun, I hugged my mother-in-law. She looked tired, but something heavy had lifted in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "For everything." Held her. "We both lived in that prison," I said. "But now we're both free." The next morning, the shelter director helped me apply for forgiveness of all fines. Social workers helped me find a small apartment with my children. It wasn't big, but it was ours. Free from fear. My mother-in-law moved in nearby. She went to therapy, attended local support groups. She changed meals, cooked new foods, and for the first time in decades, she treated me as a daughter, not a servant. My daughter Isabella started talking again. She laughed with Matteo, her brother. She made art, sang songs, fell asleep without fear. I started working 3 days a week at a community center. I helped other women learn to read and write, and I told them my story. Simple, clear, true. One evening, when the sky was pink and calm, Isabella asked, "Mama, will they come back?" I looked into her eyes. "No, my love. They can't." She smiled, and that smile was the sun warming my soul. Later that night I sat quietly. I held Angel's silver angel necklace in my hand. I spoke to the memory of the baby I lost. "I'll make it matter," I whispered. "Your life changed mine, and I'll change others." Then I closed my eyes and slept, deeply without nightmares. During the trial, I learned a valuable lesson that I want to share with everyone who watches this story. Silence protects abusers, but speaking breaks their power. True courage is raising your voice when your heart feels broken. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing your own peace. I share this because there may be girls or women watching now, afraid in silence, looking at the scars, wondering if anyone will ever hear them. I say to you, you are not invisible. You are not alone. And you deserve justice, love, and hope. Thank you for following my story through every chapter. The highs, the lows, the fear and the light. May you find strength in your darkest valley. May your story find its ending too. Thank you so much for watching this true and painful story to the very end. If this story touched your heart, if you cried, or felt angry, or inspired, if you know someone suffering in silence, or if you have survived pain like this, just know this. You are stronger than your scars. Every tear shed in silence deserves a voice. Every broken heart deserves healing. And every soul deserves to rise again, like this grandma did. Please subscribe to this channel so we can keep sharing stories that speak for the voiceless. Stories of pain, survival, and miracles. Leave a comment if you relate. Your words might help someone else heal. Like this video to spread awareness. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next powerful story. Together, we can build a world where truth is heard, and no pain is buried. Until the next story. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and never be silent again.